Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar, Navigating Early Enrollment, Dual Credit, AP, and more. So as folks are beginning to jump in, I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items that during the presentation we cannot see or hear you, but feel free to use the chat box to communicate directly with the panelists, and also use the Q&A. So we'll be monitoring that throughout. So again, as everyone gets settled, we're going to launch a poll. And our poll today is, which statement best describes your advising approach to dual credit and AP? So we're going to launch that poll.
Shannon, can you launch the poll? It's not on my
It's
end.
not letting you do it
Sorry.
either. Okay, it's
Yeah.
okay. All right. Can y'all see it now? We're good? Perfect. So your statements here are I primarily recommend AP, primarily recommend dual credit, I customize recommendations based on individual students, or I'm not sure which to recommend. So we'll kind of see what the answers are here, and that will guide our speaker a little bit. Okay, so it looks like based on our results that most people are saying they primarily recommend dual credit. About 40% of y'all said that. And about another 40%, because I kind of split down the middle, said they customize recommendations based on individual students. So great. I think I can share the results there maybe for y'all to see. Very good. So kind of split down the middle on dual credit and then individual recommendations. All right. Thank you so much for participating in that poll today. And then we'll kind of move on to our agenda. So again, welcome to the webinar. I am Shannon Grimsley, Assistant Director of External Training and Partnerships for the Woodward Hines Education Foundation and the Get to College program. We are recording this session today, and we will send a link afterwards to anyone who registered. For those watching today's recording, the date is November the 4th, 2025, and the material in this webinar is current through the 25-26 school year. In today's session, Navigating Early Enrollment, Dual Credit, AP, and more, you will hear about all the options for our students for early enrollment and college credits while in high school. I will now share a little background on Get to College and a few logistics about the webinar before we get started. Get to College is a nonprofit program of the Woodward Hines Education Foundation. We have 3 centers in Mississippi, one in Jackson, Ocean Springs, and South Haven, and we help parents, students, and high school counselors with all aspects of college planning and financial aid. And all of our services are completely free. Also, one other note on those centers. I don't know if you all have been checking social media or been at some of the conferences across the state in the early fall, but we just launched our new mobile center. So it is actually a Get to College center on wheels that will be visiting schools across the state, but primarily in the Mississippi Delta. So we are very excited about that 4th Get to College Center, and we encourage you to check our social media post to get a peek at that if you haven't seen it already. In our centers, even in that mobile center, we offer personalized college counseling appointments where we can tell students how to apply and when to apply for admission and scholarships, help fill out their FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, and we can also advise on essay writing and interviewing. As we mentioned earlier during the webinar, we cannot see or hear you, But again, you can ask us questions through the chat or the Q&A at any time. My colleague Chelsea Williams will be monitoring and replying to that Q&A and chat today, and we will have a time for live Q&A with the presenters at the end. But feel free to message your questions at any time. Sometimes we will kind of stop the presenter and ask the question in the moment if it's pertinent to that moment, or sometimes we'll leave them till the end, but we will definitely get all your questions answered. All right, so now I would like to introduce our guest speaker for the day. Dr. Marie Roberts has invested her career in education with extensive experience in enrollment, student success, and technology. Dr. Roberts is proud to serve as the Assistant Director for Communications, Policy, and Advocacy at the Woodward Hines Education Foundation, where she supports efforts to drive change in higher education access, persistence, and completion through strategic communication programs and initiatives. Her work centers on student-first initiatives and identifying opportunities for growth, while supporting teachers in their impactful roles, empowering students to shine, and fostering an educational environment that encourages creativity and compassion through collaboration. She is a Canvas LMS certified educator, Apple Learning Coach, and holds certifications in instructional design and delivery from Quality Matters and Universal Design for Learning. She is a proud first-generation college student and holds a doctorate degree in higher education administration from Delta State University. She also completed additional graduate work in criminal justice and earned a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Southern Mississippi. She's an adjunct instructor at the Graduate School of Delta State University, a trainer and facilitator for the Mississippi Community College Board Digital Educators Network, a leader in professional development for educators and students, a contributor to scholarly research, and a member of several dissertation committees. An active member of her community, Dr. Roberts is a lifetime member of the Junior Auxiliary of Meridian, which provides charitable services directly to benefiting children and volunteers in the children's and audiovisual ministries of her church. Marie and her husband are proud parents to 2 children, as well as their furry child, a Labrador retriever named Hattie, in honor of her love for the Southern Miss Golden Eagles. So we are so glad to have Marie here today. I am very honored to be able to work with her here at Woodward Hines. She's just a little bit busy, as you can tell from her bio, but we love working with Dr. Roberts every day, and we're excited to hear from you. So Marie, I will turn it over to you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Shannon, and welcome everyone. As Shannon and Chelsea have mentioned, we're excited to chat with you today about early enrollment activities and the opportunities that those can become available for your students. So again, I want to just make it very clear, I spent about 12 years in the community college space, advising students, working directly with students, assisting in that transition from high school to college, and had the privilege of getting to work really closely with about 24 different high schools in navigating what does that memorandum of understanding look like between the high school and the college. But also I spent 3 years in K-12 where again, I was working with our high school counselors and helping make sure that students were college and career ready. So I'm going to ask you guys to be really brave for me, and I'm going to ask that you throw it in our chat box and tell us a little bit about one word that's describing your current experience with AP or dual credit. Now remember, I can't really see or hear you, so we are monitoring the chat, but I want to be asked that you be brave, step out on faith here and get in the chat box and introduce yourself. Tell us maybe where you're coming to us from, what school or what district, and then a one-word description of your current experience with dual credit and AP programs. And while you're doing that, I want to preface this with a lot of the materials that you're going to see today may seem very robust, right? I don't want you to feel pressure to take a lot of notes. I'm going to send you a Google Drive link in our chat box that's going to provide for you a place to resource, to download, to reference, to save. There's nothing proprietary that I'm sharing with you today. I want you to share this with your colleagues and maybe with your fellow CCR teachers. If you happen to have a career coach in your school or district, if you have to have someone at your central office or central services who are helping make decisions about what works for your school or for your district, we're going to provide all of those resources to you so you have access to that link as it is available. We did have a comment come in here that says the chat is currently disabled. So we did have that come through our Q&A. So we're going to work through those challenges. So have no fear. We're going to continue to rock on, but appreciate each of you being here with us today. We're going to check on the chat functionality, but we'll continue on with the presentation. So I want to ask you guys to think about and reflect on what are some of the biggest challenges that you have when you're helping students access early college opportunities. And that's something for you to reflect on, and we're going to come back to that as we go throughout the session. So we're going to move on, but I want you to remember just to reflect on some of the challenges that you're facing in helping those students. And Shannon, can you click over for me?
Yeah, I was trying to fix the chat and the Q&A. I think the Q&A is working, but I don't know why chat's disabled. So maybe we can use Q&A. So
Absolutely. Yeah. So Suzanne Oakley gets a gold star. She's already using that Q&A. Nothing like a good, great, flexible educator. So she's already shared that her one word is overwhelming. So I appreciate you sharing that with us, Suzanne. I can certainly see that. I want to tell you a little bit about why early enrollment opportunities are important, depending on your lens and what lived experiences you bring to it. And hopefully you can walk away today with either some clarifying information or at least a better idea of how to best make that less overwhelming for you. So one of the things I want you to remember is that when we're kind of making an operational definition of what is early enrollment, it is different for everyone. It's different in every state. It's actually can potentially even be different in every potential community college district or even in every school district in K-12. These are supposed to be programs that come with a strategy, right? They are supposed to be a strategic method upon which to help students be prepared. There's obviously some benefits coming to students so they can go ahead and get a jump start on their collegiate journey. It's obviously proven in the data and in the research that this is a confidence builder for students who find success in some type of early enrollment. In most cases, it is supposed to help the student save money, whether that mean the student or the parent guardian is responsible for the costs associated with it, or if the school or district is absorbing those costs. But it's also supposed to be really inundating themselves with college-ready skills. I will pause there and say, if you'll note, when we think about early enrollment opportunities, the majority of individuals will typically think these are our high-flying students. These are ours who are knocking it out of the park on standardized tests. They have earned all of their Carnegie units towards graduation. But in reality, if you'll dig deep into how the Mississippi legislator has actually approached it, we are actually able to actually utilize both ends of the student spectrum in terms of how early enrollment can support students. So of course, we do have those high-flying students, those students who do qualify for AP, those students who do qualify for academic dual credit. What a lot of counselors and my folks in K-12 don't realize is that you actually have legislative authority to use your at-risk dropout funds specifically for early enrollment programs, whether that looks like an early college or middle college model, or even students whoever that definition is for you guys looking at risk of dropping out, you can support them with tuition payments and other things. So I want to encourage you, if your school or district doesn't already have a strategy for supporting at-risk students, consider maybe it's just simply they need a fresh environment, they need a different challenge and opportunity upon which perhaps that type of student would also benefit from an early enrollment program. I mentioned strategy and what this needs to play into in terms of how your school or your district or your counseling advising style needs to play into which would you recommend and why. If you're a public school or a public district, you know that accountability is a big part of the conversation, whether we're talking in November of 2025 or any other month or year, accountability plays into the conversation. So there is obviously an institutional strategy when we're thinking about early enrollment and what that looks like. But the other side of that is having that deep understanding of different types of these early college acceleration opportunities and these programs. Honestly, it comes to our core when we're counseling students and we're advising families on what they need to do. We need to have a really firm grasp on what the landscape is for us and how to best advise students. I spoke a little bit to what that institutional strategy looks like. I'm going to just assume that you guys probably already know this, but I do want to call to your attention that there is a 1,000-point system for high schools and districts and early enrollment opportunities. Think dual credit, dual enrollment. We'll talk a little bit about more of what those mean. They make up, 5% of that total accountability. So if your school or your district's not already having conversations about we're having conversations about accountability. We're having conversations about school ratings or district ratings. early enrollment plays into that. So if that's not a conversation that you're already having at your central services or your central office, I want to encourage you to do so, because that's, 5% of the total score is coming directly from that. And you have to lean on your educational partners, whether that's a local community college, a public four-year university, a private four-year university, or even some external partners we'll talk a little bit about in some of our case studies today. You need to be having that conversation with your superintendent. You need to be having that conversation with your federal programs directors, how early enrollment programs play into how your school or your district is rated. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the landscape and what this means. I think our chat box is back live now. So if it is, I want to encourage you to answer this question. What is the biggest difference that you see between advanced placement, also known as AP, or dual credit? So again, take to our chat box. What's the biggest difference you see between AP and dual credit? Again, on our chat box here, we're answering biggest difference between AP and dual credit. Already had a great one come through here. The points, specifically talking about those acceleration points for accountability, points for dual credit are more of a sure thing. I love that you've already leaned into that. We're going to talk a little bit more about what does it mean to be a sure thing. And if you were a betting person, what does it look like you're going to place your bets on a sure thing that could potentially be dual credit? And then also test score requirements. There are some differences, some variances between test score and academic requirements, and that actually varies by the provider of your dual credit. We'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. So if you're coming from a school or a district whose standardized test scores may not reflect the readiness of your students, you may want to be looking for alternative dual credit or early enrollment providers because standardized test options are not the best solution for your school, your district. What I want you to leave from this webinar today is to take away knowing that you do have options, you do have some alternatives. So I appreciate you guys for sharing those. So honestly, when we're thinking about having a conversation about how to go about advising students, let's talk about the specifics between what is AP versus dual enrollment, dual credit, all of those things. AP is in and of itself a third-party entity. It is a for-profit company. It's governed by the College Board. It is based on an assessment. You guys know as well as I do, or I hope that you do at this point, that there are some additional training and certification requirements for classroom teachers. Let's be real, guys, in the middle of a teacher shortage, I don't know how many of our schools and our districts have a plethora of AP certified teachers ready and willing to step out on faith and teach this AP course with no guarantee, aka a sure thing, that they are going to earn college credit. Their students are going to earn college credit at the end of it. Traditionally, AP is set up on a high school campus by these trained teachers. It does have a very widely recognized national credit associated with it, but those credit policies vary by individual colleges, and there is a cost associated. Some schools or districts do choose to absorb that cost. I have seen models where schools or districts do have to have a commitment letter from the parent or guardian saying, my student is signing up for this AP class. We are aware that we're responsible for the testing fee before the course ever even begins. The other thing I want to note on AP, though, is when we're thinking about it, I'm going to use a Mississippi example. I've got a Mississippi student. I know it's going to take me 120 credit hours to get to a bachelor's degree. More often than not, in most of our public institutions, and again, I'm going to encourage you from a counseling standpoint, encourage each student and family to check with the colleges or universities where they're interested. Most students who take AP, while they are awarded the credit for the course, those hours do not count towards the degree. What I mean by that is, let's say you take AP, math AP, right? And you make that score on that test. That student is typically given like a pass, a grade of P on that transcript for the college credit, but they didn't actually get the 3 hours in college algebra. So they're still having to earn 120 hours towards that baccalaureate degree. And so while the AP did help them, they got to not have to take college algebra, they still have to have 120 hours to go. So we're thinking about from a cost saving standpoint, did you actually save that student money? Did you actually save that student time? Now, if the college or university is actually awarding them 3 credit hours and it is contributing towards their diploma, absolutely, but it is worth a conversation to be had. Some other things going on in our chat, we're having conversations about what is the difference between academic and CTE. Good news, we're going to talk a little bit about what that can look like for today as far as how do you actually go about getting it set up. And then again, coming back to the cost, and then the cost itself varying from college to college. So again, here thinking through what that looks like. So we already asked at the beginning which statement was describing your current approach. We were split pretty evenly between dual credit, making a customized solution for each student, or we're not sure. I do want to highlight and elevate Woodward Hines, the organization that is the oversight, so to speak, of Get to College. We've actually done some really cool work in the Mississippi Delta for schools who are in the middle of a teaching shortage, where they do not have credentialed teachers qualified to teach AP. And because of their location, they may not have a community college really close by upon which to partner with. They've been able to do some really cool work where they're bringing in virtually some AP certified teachers directly into the classroom for synchronous online instruction. So they're delivering like AP calculus or AP physics, AP computer science, things like that. So there are other ways to expose students to those opportunities. So I want to encourage you, if that is something, if that's one of those challenges that's like, hey, in my brain, I know my school is struggling to get AP certified teachers, or we'll talk a little bit about what do you have to be a dual credit teacher. Reach out to some of your partners, touch base with Shannon or Chelsea or myself. Let's figure out if we have some opportunities we might can connect you. I'm not saying that we have the solution, but we may know someone that can at least help you with the best practice to get there. The other thing I want to note here, not super popular in Mississippi, but it is worthy of noting, is the International Baccalaureate, which is known as IB, and then Cambridge programs. These are other types of global recognition, interdisciplinary curricula. They're a lot more diploma centric, as in like there's a whole sequence of classes. It's an entire multi-spanning year of a high school experience curriculum. They're very powerful tools, but they are very cumbersome to set up. So those of you who noted that in the chat, if you're interested in learning more about IB or Cambridge, I'm not going to be your go-to resource, but I am going to include some links and some resources of some general information and point you to some folks who are a lot smarter than me in both of those, and figuring out could it potentially work for your school or for your district. All right, so what does advising when it comes to early enrollment actually look like? I want to start this slide and I'm going to ask you, I want you to think about a very specific student that you have either currently or very recently advised. You've got that person in mind. They've been in your office. They've had questions. What do I need to do with my life? What should I be when I grow up? What should I do to help get me there? I want you to be thinking about that particular student and have that person's face and name and circumstances in mind as we are working through this section together. So I'm going to give you some, this is again my opinion, but I'm going to try to point you back to the research and the data that goes with it. If you're looking at a student who you know is headed to a 4-year university in the state of Mississippi, dual credit, more often than not, is going to be the strongest piece of advisement I can give for you to share with that student, because there are some guaranteed credits that are going to transfer. If they take a class from a Mississippi college, 4-year university, public, meaning any of the public 4-year colleges, universities, or any of the 15 community colleges, those credits are guaranteed to transfer. And I'll pick on Ole Miss for an example. Mississippi State still calls like freshman English, the very generic like English comp, freshman English. Ole Miss has freshman English. They call it something slightly different because they're Ole Miss, and that's okay. But what I'm saying is there is a state contractual agreement. If your student takes freshman English, it doesn't matter if they take it at Jones College, if they take it at Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College, if they take it at Mississippi State or at Ole Miss or at Alcorn, it's freshman English across all of those institutions. And there is a contractual memorandum of understanding, MOU agreement, that freshman English is freshman English. And so I don't want your students to be fearful of like, well, Ole Miss calls it this on their degree plan. I promise it is going to transfer. There's entire documents, there's entire books associated with it. The other reason I like it as well is there's no high stakes exam. Unfortunately, we are the products of living in an environment of high stakes assessments when it comes to state tests. And as a result of dual credit, there is no high stakes exam that you would typically have it experienced in AP. Now, that same student that you're talking about, let's say, hey, you know what, they're not planning on staying in state. They're planning on going off. They have big dreams to leave the state of Mississippi. More often than not, especially depending on the geographic location of where they're headed, AP courses may likely be more strongly favored, especially if you know that they're going to do well. If they've had a strong performance in state testing, if they do not suffer from test anxiety, if they are not someone who traditionally needs a lot of test accommodations. So I think we're not heavily looking at IEPs or 504s because those do take a third-party approval process to test with AP. Those are national programs that have a demonstrated mastery of success. And so typically, if I'm looking at helping a student who knows that they're headed off, I'm going to encourage them before they sign up for that AP class to make sure that the colleges that they're interested in are going to accept it, and what is the minimum score. So they know going in, what do I need on the test, the high stake test at the end of this class, in order to get that college credit awarded to me. So I know if I'm going in with a 4 or if I'm headed in with a 5, I know I need to get that before I finish. And then for your students who are career technical, they tell you they're headed into the workforce, they would like to gain a credential of value. A CTE course, typically called dual enrollment, and we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. It can be dual credit, but more often than not, it may be dual enrollment. We'll define what those are in just a minute. We encourage them to go that route and make sure they earn the national credential. That may be something like an NCCER, that could be something like a CPAS, that could be something like ServSafe if it's a culinary program. There's a lot of different national certifications that are directly embedded into CTE courses. Encourage them to go for that national certification as a part of that, because it helps you from an accountability standpoint in K-12, but it also helps that student to validate their skills moving forward. So I want to encourage you to think through what that looks like. And so again, that set of advising best practices, I almost picture it like a thought map where you decide, okay, you come in as a student and you tell me what it is that you want to do with your life. Let's figure out what works best for you and how it can help you to get there. Because you'll also have other things at play as it relates to GPA requirements, test score requirements. What do they need to graduate from high school? What Carnegie units need to be earned? Do you have a credentialed teacher that can teach it? Or are we looking at a transportation or a technology challenge or a barrier there? Does your school or district help pay for it? And if so, maybe if your school or district has said, we're all in on dual credit, we don't pay for AP. Well, that kind of gives you your answer right then on how you best advise students. But I do want to encourage you following this session, take a step back and go and ask the persons that be, hey guys, you made the decision that we're only paying for dual credit. Can we open this up because I have a student who might be a better fit for AP, or vice versa? So I encourage you as you're thinking through what that student-centered approach to advising looks like. So I'm going to share with you guys a copy of a case study that came out of Arizona. It's Arizona Western College. They had a large group of people, a group of students who they were struggling with enrollment. So I want to encourage you, especially if you happen to be a part of the process that gets to do MOU reviews with your local college or university. Arizona is a great case study to look at because Arizona Western College was hurting in enrollment. There was an enrollment decline coming. There was just an enrollment dip. And so the local K-12 school district said, hey, we've got students who want to go to school. You're in the middle of enrollment cliff. Where can we negotiate? Where can we have opportunities to have conversations? And it's not a money-driven thing, but I want to point that out to you as a best practice here, because some of the things that they were able to accomplish would be huge for a Mississippi school or a Mississippi district. Number one, they actually had reduced tuition across the board. They charged just $25 per credit hour. So for us, that looks at like college algebra charging you $75. Now, that's not taking into consideration books or fees or things like that, but $75 for a college class, it's a pretty big deal, right? They also went through and they did a full curriculum integration. So they had the higher ed curriculum person sit down with the K-12 curriculum person, as well as CTE, when and if it was necessary, to make sure that those three systems or those three curricula spoke to each other, that there was bridges formed, that there was connections that were made. They also went through a pretty robust process of revamping. When a K-12 school teacher is hired, they go ahead and collect all of the information to have it readily available to credential that teacher for dual credit authorization. So like when a K-12 teacher was onboarded, they knew if they were coming into high school, they went ahead and got all of their college transcripts, maybe not just the one that was related to the subject area that they were teaching. They went ahead and collected all of their portfolio samples. So if and when on the fly that teacher needed to be credentialed for a higher education institution, they already had all the paperwork that they needed. So I want to encourage you, especially if you get to work closely with like HR or whoever in your central services folks are onboarding new employees, make sure that you're saving college universities transcripts for all of your employees, and make sure that you're collecting the information, because you never know when you're going to have the opportunity to have a teacher credentialed on the fly and be all of a sudden eligible now to teach dual enrollment, dual credit, or maybe even AP. So as a result of all this, again, I'll send you the link to the full case study, but I just wanted to highlight here that the students who participated in dual credit were almost 2.5 times more likely to attend college than their non early enrollment peers. And so for us, we know in Mississippi, students who will complete the FAFSA are more likely to enroll in college. And then if you will add on to that, they have one positive experience in an early enrollment platform, whether that's AP or dual credit dual enrollment, you're setting your students up for success. They also actually earned a dual credit, actually helped them to earn a bachelor's degree, almost 3 times higher than the rate of those who had not taken any type of dual credit. And as a result, Arizona Western College became the fastest growing community college in Arizona. And so I'm just encouraging guys to think through what that looks like when you're talking through, and I'll say it like this. Typically, early spring is when community colleges, which is the area that I would probably know best, are in the season of like renewing their MOUs and like reviewing that process. So this will be upcoming when you guys get back from Christmas break. This will be the time upon which you need to be having conversations about what do we need to be looking at in our MOU? Where can we make this more beneficial for our students? If you know, someone spoke a little bit about in the chat about the cost variances between providers. If one community college, which is the one that's assigned to your area, is charging significantly higher than another, then maybe you look at a 4-year university college partner. I'm not encouraging you to dissolve a really strong community partnership that you have, but it is worthy of a conversation to be had. There's also an enrollment cliff that is very quickly looming to our institutions. And so they need to be aware of where can we make these up. Maybe it's a conversation to be had about, hey, well, your college or university has to provide virtual tutoring services for all students. Can the K-12 school district scale back some of the things that we're providing because our students are now taking advantage of some of the ones that are being made available to our college students? So we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like in that process in just a minute. All right. So one of the things I want to talk through is some key takeaways from you. I'm going to make the assumption, I'm going to talk to you guys as if I didn't know it either. Mississippi Department of Education has a very clear definition of what a student ISP is. That is an individualized success plan. It is required starting in the 7th grade. It is an organic, living, breathing plan that takes into account future goals, career exploration, course sequencing and planning across the middle school and high school career. Literally anything under the sun is taken into account in the ISP. What I don't find happening very often is it is actually in state statute, MDE policy, and in the regs that all dual credit is supposed to directly align to the student's ISP. Now, is anybody like checking that? I don't know, but they could. So I'll pose this as a question. You've got a senior, this young lady or young man is telling you that they are going straight into the workforce because they're going to do some on-the-job training to become a welder. Great student, great plan, great job. When you enroll that student in freshman English for college, in order to meet a Carnegie unit to graduate with senior English, you have now violated that student's ISP. There is no reason for a student who's headed directly into the workforce, going into welding, to ever take English Composition 1. I understand that it is helpful to have that student in English Comp 1. It helps your accountability. It helps that student have a positive experience. That student may change their mind later. But technically, English Comp 1 does not support that student's ISP if it's on file that says that that student is wanting to go into welding. And I point that to you. Again, I've got a resource link out I'll share with you that will take you directly out to the definitions and the handbook for it. And so you can see a little bit about what that looks like. The other thing I'll point to you here is there is actually a state statute to exactly define what is dual credit and what is dual enrollment. And those are 2 different terms. I do want to make sure that we leave today's session understanding what the differences are. Dual enrollment means exactly that. You are enrolled in 2 places or more than 2 places, but they do not speak to each other. There is no credit associated with the 2. There is no MOU in place. That student took it upon themselves while in high school to go enroll somewhere else. It has nothing to do with the high school. There is no expectation that you accept credit, that you have a conversation, that you report grades back, that you share retention or at-risk conversations. There is no data sharing in terms of IEPs or 504 accommodations. Dual enrollment is exactly that. You're enrolled in 2 places. It's just like a college student who's taking most of their classes from one institution and then goes and picks up a college class from another college or university. They have nothing to do with each other. Dual credit, on the other hand, is a formalized agreement. Someone mentioned about CTE potentially being problematic to set up. CTE can actually follow under a dual credit agreement in the same way. Again, it's just something about editing your MOU. It's about changing up your memorandum of understanding. And the reason it's important is most colleges we'll try to say, well, we discount dual credit or we don't discount dual enrollment. Dual credit and dual enrollment have nothing to do with money. It has to do with where the credit is associated after the credit is awarded. So I'm going to pose this to our chat and ask our members here. Does your school or district accept college course credit for classes taken outside of a normal academic term? Think summer break, a holiday term, an intensive 8-week class. Does your school or district accept college credit for courses taken outside of a quote normal academic timeframe? Again, in our chat here, answering the question, yes, no, sometimes maybe. Does your school or district accept college course credit for classes that students take outside of a normal academic? Got several yeses that have come in. So it's props to you guys for having pretty progressive schools or districts. If you guys recall, when driver's ed used to be taught in the summertime, when we used to all take driver's ed in the summer before the semester started, that was just a K-12 class, right? I am seeing more and more students who choose to take, especially if they're like a student athlete or if they're involved in the arts or if they are involved in something very heavy. I will see them take a 3-week online class over Christmas break. It's the same class that their peers took in the fall semester while they were in the band and playing football and cheerleading or doing whatever it is that they do. And I have some high schools and districts that choose not to accept that credit. It's the same provider. It's the same, student learning outcomes, but we have some schools or districts who choose not. So I want to encourage you, if you're in a school or district, you guys need to have a policy in place. You need to have a document process that's followed to make sure you're aware that students are doing that. Where I have also seen it come into play is if a student is to fail something, maybe in 10th or 11th grade, they decide to take that college course over the summer, and then they want to bring it back so that they can continue to advance to the next grade with their peers. I'm not saying what you need to be doing there, but it is a conversation worthy to be had as a part of that conversation. So a couple of key takeaways. Of course, you need to make sure that accountability is a primary driver in making sure that those 47.5 points in the current model, depending on what the new model also looks like, as a part of your accreditation and your accountability, what that looks like. Also making sure what that credit choice looks like. Do you need to make sure that dual credit offers guaranteed college credit? I will say, I'm going to speak on my lived experience as a community college side of things. I will tell you that pass rates for a dual credit course are always significantly stronger than a pass rate on an AP test. Because again, you guys know as well as I do, a high stakes assessment, it's one and done. That student may be having a bad day, life happens, that one day that they take that test, whereas dual credit takes in a comprehensive overview of multiple assignments, multiple submissions, multiple essays, multiple tests, whatever it is. So pass rates for dual credit always are higher than pass rates for AP. I will say, however, if you look at the data, and I would encourage you to do this, especially if you're at like a central office, central services, or you have access to it, examine if you happen to have dual credit that's taught by your high school teachers, especially on your high school campus during your high school day. There is also a pretty significant increase in the number of pass rates for dual credit taught by K-12 teachers during the school day, as opposed to courses that are maybe taught online by a community college employee or college or university employee. It's interesting because, and again, I'm going to say this, and hear me when I say I'm giving this as an example. It is a lot harder for a high school, I'm going to say English. It's a lot harder for a high school English teacher who's with that student all day long, who sees that student, who may run into that student at the grocery store or may go to church with that student. It's a lot harder for that student to fail their high school English teacher's dual credit class than it would be if they were taking it online from someone who doesn't know that student, from someone who doesn't know that student's family. So I want to encourage you, when you're thinking about rigor, when you're thinking about evaluating dual credit, make sure that the college processes, the book is used, the same types of assessments and tests are used. Just make sure that you're holding the line on the rigor, and it doesn't just become senior English that also happens to give that student college credit. Make sure that it is actually adhering to the rigor that is involved. Shannon, will you check and see if I have one more slide after this one? Okay, back up for me one. I want to bring up a couple of other things. I'm going to note really quickly here just for some takeaways. There are some differences in how to best advise your student based on their their specific personalized statistics. And what I mean by that is, does your school or district define the number of Carnegie units to make so-and-so a junior? So as an example, I bet if I asked in our chat box, how many Carnegie units is required for your school or district to call that student a junior versus a sophomore? Depending on your answer, this is where I'm going with when I'm talking about this MOU. If your school or district says 12 and a half credits makes you a junior, well, a student, depending on how you have your master schedule set up, if they're starting in 7th or 8th grade, they may actually end up being a junior in January of their 10th grade year. Y'all follow me on that? The number of credits earned by Christmas, especially if y'all are on like a block schedule, they may actually have the number of credits earned to be a junior. So when you're talking about academic dual credit, the rule for the community college system is that they have to have a junior, they have to be a junior. Well, you guys define what a junior is. It's not up to the community college to define what a junior is. In the same way for CTE, you have to be a 10th grader and you have to have the recommendation from the CTE teacher. Your school or your district and your handbook defines what is a 10th grader. So I have had some schools or some districts who have come back and said, well, we either didn't have a definition of it or our Carnegie units were a little bit out of date or antiquated. So we updated it so we could actually have students participating in things more quickly and being able to get one class knocked out in the spring of 10th grade year. And then maybe something like an art appreciation or a psychology or something that didn't necessarily have to have a test score minimum requirement, not necessarily like a core class or even like a foreign language. That's been a very popular one for schools who are struggling to find foreign language teachers. I've also have some students who have said, hey, we're going to use the career tech if you're not already looking at doing Smart Start as the approved CCR alternative. It takes the CCR course and allows students to take it, and you can run it through the CTE side of things. So that way you're looking at a 2.0 GPA versus a 3.0 GPA. Gives you that opportunity. Happy to collaborate and answer questions on that if you have any questions about it. But I want to encourage you to think through the ways that you can personalize your counseling style to the student that you're serving. The last thing I want to throw out to you as a suggestion, I want you to write this one down because it is important. Everything is up for negotiation when you're working with an education partner. So what I mean by that is, if you as a counselor know that it is a challenge for your students to take dual credit from a private college or university because maybe that's who you're partnered with, or maybe from a community college because that is who you're partnered with, did you know that you can negotiate in your MOU and say, hey, for every student who enrolls, they're guaranteed one official transcript sent for free to one college of their choosing? Right? Put that in your negotiation and say, hey, as a part of our partnership, I need every high school student at the end of their senior year to be guaranteed one official transcript showing their dual credit earned to be sent to one college of their choosing, and save them that $10. Put that up for negotiation. Perhaps it's up for negotiation that your school or your district can scale back, as I mentioned, some counseling programs or some tutoring programs or some other type of service that is provided. Maybe your school, your district is paying for a plagiarism detection software for use in K-12. Well, if your entire junior and senior class is now all of a sudden taking a class through the community college that already has a plagiarism detection software, maybe you can save your school or district some money as a result of that because you can partner with your local education institution and have that service provided to you as a result of a really robust MOU. I've actually even seen MOUs that say like, you know, colleges for the most part don't have numerical grades. How are you going to calculate Val and Sal calculations if you do not get a numerical grade? You can add numerical grade reporting into your MOU. The college could be required to submit to you numerical grades, or you could have a standardized scale and say like an A equals this or B equals that. You know, there's a lot of opportunities there that you can go back to your education partner and say, where can you work with me on this? This is supposed to be a mutually beneficial partnership and relationship. Where can you work with me on negotiating for this information? So with that, that was a lot of information. That was really quick. And I want to point you to a host of various resources. I'll throw that in your chat box, going over to, of course, a copy of the slide deck, the Mississippi Articulation and Transfer Tool. That's the website where I have shared that you can go and see that English Comp 1 at one college, public university in Mississippi, is the same as English Comp 1 at any of the 15 community colleges and vice versa, as well as a link out to some various case studies that I've referenced as a course as a result of today's session. And then the actual 60 some odd pages dual credit handbook, which specifically spells out those ISP alignment requirements that we talked about. What are the various academic requirements, test score requirements, test score minimums, as well as a link out to MDE's website where you can go and look up various course codes. Because for those of you who have worked with registrars or other master schedulers across your school district, getting the right course code into your system is a big game changer when it comes to accountability and making sure that your courses are accounted for correctly in your accountability. If it happens to not be coded as dual credit, then you're really messing yourself and shooting yourself up in the foot here when it comes to acceleration. So making sure you get the right course code in the system and that it's the most up to date, because those things do change frequently. I've included all that for you in our chat box, and that's a Google Drive folder that you should have access to at any time. I've got a couple of questions in the Q&A. I want to try to respond to those. I had one come
Hey,
in
Marie.
from, yes.
Really quickly, can you send that? You sent it host and panelists, and you can send that to everyone in the chat. Just wanted to let you know that.
Absolutely. Let's see. Well, I can't change it, so I'm gonna see if I know Shannon, I think I sent it to you as well. It will not let me send it out. Let me see if I can do it in the I only have that option for host and panelist. I'm gonna make sure you guys
Okay.
get this information, and we'll also make sure when Shannon sends the link
I think
out
I
with the
can get it.
recording, she'll include it as well. All right, so a couple of Q&As. First one up came to us from Lasagna. Does the AP class count if the student does not test? It's a waste of time if the student takes the AP class online. So great questions. So in terms of accountability, participating in the AP course will help you from your accountability standpoint. It will not, you'll get the acceleration points off of it, but at the end of the day, as a student, it does not help them if they're not going to pay to take the test. And so it really and truly would only really help them in terms of GPA weighting, or if you do some type of Val or Sal question, it gives it that as a setup. Shanta, let's see. Monitoring a student ISP for a student going to community college, CTE, dual enrolling in a class like English. If the community college offers an associate's degree in that CTE pathway that requires additional academic classes, how would that work when deciding whether or not the English Common One class is necessary for the student's pathway? Great question. So the question again here is, look, I'm coming back to that example that I gave. Student is deciding that they want to go into a welding program. That is going to fall on you knowing the requirements of that welding. If there is a local community college that offers a welding program that is an associate's degree, meaning there's 60 hours of technical of coursework, with 45 of those being technical hours and the last 15 being academic, then that student's ISP would most certainly align. We would want to make sure that the student's ISP is reflecting this student is planning to earn the Associates of Applied Science degree in welding, which includes technical English or English Comp 1. And that could be up to that student. Fun fact, I will encourage you guys, if you're not already using ACT work keys as another potential opportunity for advisement, and when you're deciding dual credit opportunities, ACT work keys plays into that. We'll talk a little bit about that. But Shanta, to answer your question, if your local community college only has a 1 semester or a 1 year welding, and it's just straight welding classes and there are no English courses involved, in reality, that student's ISP no longer matches the intent of the need to take English. So either the student's ISP needs to be changed that says the student plans on, working as welding, but may also go back later and pick up a course, or gives the opportunity for the student to then take another type of program affiliated with it. So, great questions there. Any other questions? All right, let's see. All right, now I have the option to respond back to everyone with the updated link. Yeah, Caitlin, thanks for pointing out the initial link that was shared was only pulling up contact list for dual credit. Points of contact, I've just posted the new link there in the chat box, which will take you guys out to a Google Drive folder, which has a link to a copy of today's slide deck, as well as about 7 or so documents that I think that would be helpful for you, including the list of dual credit contacts. The main one I think will be most helpful is the one that's called Final Procedures Manual. It's, like I said, it's about 40 pages or so long. It talks a lot about the definitions that are associated with it, the alignment of the ISP, as well as some other things that may be helpful for you. Absolutely. And I just threw that over in our chat box for us.
Any more questions? Now y'all see why I feel so fortunate to work with Dr. Roberts. Great information today, Marie. We fully enjoyed this. I know that this is a question that I get a lot, having a high school student myself and interacting with lots of parents. What's better, AP or dual credit? And it's kind of like, depends on what you're looking for, right? And depends on what's going on there. So we appreciate all this information and all the resources that you gave us today. And we know that everyone found this very, very helpful. You will be emailed the recording for this webinar. We'll get that sent to you in that follow-up email. I will also be posting it on our YouTube channel shortly after we end here if you want to go back and watch it. And then if you want to point other folks to it, like, hey, you missed this great webinar, it's going to be on our YouTube channel. So if you have any follow-up questions. Marie, if you don't mind, as I'm finishing up, put your email, if you don't mind, in the
Absolutely.
chat. And then we'll give you all our general training email in just a moment. So today was our fourth webinar. Can y'all believe it? Almost done with our fall Topic Tuesday series. It is November. It will be Christmas soon. Crazy to think about. Stay tuned for our next Topic Tuesday webinar, which will be on Tuesday, December the 2nd. And during that webinar, we will be discussing tribal colleges. We will continue this webinar series through the spring semester as well. And if you participate in 5 webinars, you will have the opportunity to apply for 0.5 CEUs. And if you participate in all 10 webinars over the fall and spring, you'll have the opportunity to apply for 1 full CEUs. So the remaining webinars for the fall and spring semester are listed here on the screen and will include topics such as CTE Credentials of Value, supporting first-generation college students, and several more. These webinars are listed under the Educator section of our website, our Get to College website, and then you'll select Topic Tuesday under that Events section. While you are there registering, please check out all the other resources for you and your student listed under that Educator tab. We have a lot of training opportunities remaining for our educators for this 25-26 school year, and we hope that you will attend as many as possible. So a few of those that are remaining for our fall and spring is we're done with our in-person FAFSA 101 trainings, but we do have a couple of virtual ones coming up in December, January, and February. A couple of these are December one and February one will be during the afternoon hours between 1 and 3:30. And then our January one will be between 9 and 11:30. So a couple more opportunities for you all to get that very crucial FAFSA 101 training so you can help your students complete their FAFSAs. Also, we conducted our first in-person FAFSA 201 training this past week. So many of you might say, what is FAFSA 201 and what is the difference? The recommendation is kind of that you have FAFSA 101 to start with, because that's really going to give you that foundation that you need for FAFSA 201, although we will do kind of a brief rundown in FAFSA 201. But what is FAFSA 201? It's a great training. I really enjoyed it last week when we did it in person. It is going to give you that scenario-based training, like some exact scenarios on some tricky things. Even though we say they're tricky, I would venture to say most of you all probably encountered or will encounter almost every one of these scenarios if you're really digging in and helping your students with FAFSAs. So it's a interactive training, and we'd love for you to join us in person. We've got 2 more in person, one in South Haven on November the 12th, and then November 20th in Ocean Springs. But if you can't join us in person, we do have some virtual opportunities. The first of those being this Thursday, November the 6th. So it will be still interactive virtually. So if you do choose to join us virtually, do know there will be a little bit of interaction. Some very similar to what we did today, where you can type in your answers and interact with us that way. Or it will be a meeting format. So it will not be a webinar, but it'll be a meeting format where we'll kind of talk about these scenarios. So we'd love to have y'all, and I really will tell you, it's a great training that I think you'll learn a lot from. All right, so we are done with today's training. We really appreciate everything we've heard today. I see a lot of thank yous in the chat, and we really do appreciate that. So we will send all the follow-up, send all the links that Dr. Roberts sent, and a link to this particular uh, webinar here. On the screen here is all of our contact information, Facebook, Instagram, and also our training email that we monitor. So if you have any questions there, please feel free to drop us a line. So we appreciate everyone being here today, and we will see you again in December for our last of our fall Topic Tuesday series. Thanks so much, and everybody have a great November. See you soon.